today I am going to start the next topic, that is solution to the basic problems under socialist economy. How to solve the basic problems under socialist economy. So we know that the basic problems of an economy are: number one, what to produce, how to produce, and number three, for whom to produce. So how to solve these three basic problems under socialist economy, and what are the instruments to solve these three basic problems under socialist economy, that we are going to discuss today. So first we have number one, we have what to produce. We know that under socialist economy, all the productive resources are under the control of government, managed by government, produced by government. So government is the responsible person in the case of socialist economy. Now, the problem of what to produce under socialist economy, we know that planning authority is there. Planning authority is there to solve the problem of what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. Now we have to know how the problem of what to produce is solved under this socialist economy with the help of this planning authority. So first of all, the planning authority will estimate the amount of availability of resources, that how much resources they have available in the country or in an economy. And the second thing, what are the need, what are the things required, required to solve the problem. So they will estimate, or the planning authority will estimate the amount of resources and the required amount of resources. What are the required? What are the things they needed? Whether they need more amount of machinery, they need more amount of capitals, whether they need more amount of land, or whether they need more amount of labor. So all the resources, productive resources, and the available amount of resources in an economy will be estimated by, calculated by the planning authority. Now on the basis of that estimation, they will also estimate the requirement or the demand of the population. What the people are willing to demand. What type of things they are going to purchase. So depending on that, the planning authority will decide to produce. So what to produce and how much to produce will be solved by the planning authority under socialist economy. And before doing that, first step, they will estimate how much resources available they have, how much resources they need to buy, they need to add more to fulfill the needs, to fulfill the demand, and then accordingly they will produce. So they will produce those commodities, which are the national priority, which is required by the maximum amount of people. So depending on the national priority, the central planning authority will produce. If the demand for the necessity goods is more in the economy, then the planning authority will produce more amount of necessity goods, so that it will fulfill the needs, it will fulfill the desire, it will fulfill the requirement of the people, mass people. So this is the way how the problem of what to produce is solved under socialist economy. Now we will move to the next problems, how to produce. Number two, we have how to produce. So the problem how to produce in socialist economy is also solved with the help of this planning authority. So planning authority or central planning authority is responsible for deciding how they are going to produce. So in order to use the techniques or methods of production to be used in the socialist economy, again they will estimate, they will calculate the resources, okay, which methods. So they will use that techniques, that methods of production where maximum employment opportunity should be created, where maximum economic growth should be taken place. So depending on that, depending on the maximum employment opportunity and to accelerate the economic growth, they will choose that techniques. So we know that almost all the economy wants to choose the cheapest and the most efficient techniques of production, but when they choose the techniques of production in the case of socialist economy, they make sure that the maximum resources should be used, maximum amount of factors of production should be used in the socialist economy. Now if they see that the priorities, or if they see that a country like India, where, or we can see that the country like China, let's consider the example of country like China. So China is also one of the example of that socialist type of economy where all the resources are under the control of government. Now we know that the population of China is very high, largest populated country in the world. Now if the country is like China, and suppose if they are going to choose the techniques of production like capital intensive techniques. So in the case of capital intensive techniques, maximum number of machinery equipments will be used and less number of labor. But do you think that it is practical to use capital intensive techniques in the case of China? No, that is not the suitable techniques. And the planning authority will not choose that capital intensive techniques in country like China, where mass population, where the largest populated country in the world is China. So in that case, which is the best techniques to choose? The best technique for China is labor intensive techniques. Why is labor intensive techniques? Because if they choose the labor intensive techniques, then maximum employment can be generated, okay, and the economic growth will be also achieved. So it is better to choose labor intensive techniques in order to produce goods and services, especially in country like socialist economy, like suppose we will take China, okay. So in China it is suitable to choose labor intensive techniques instead of choosing capital intensive techniques, because in the case of capital intensive techniques, maximum work will be done by machine. So if you choose that capital intensive techniques, then in country like China, maximum people will remain unemployed because the man or the labor will be replaced by machine. So in that case, the resources may not be utilized fully. So it is better to choose labor intensive techniques if we are taking the example of China to solve the problem of how to produce. Now we will move to the next part. Next part, that is for whom to produce. Now for whom to produce, this is also one of the basic problems of an economy, and in socialist economy, for whom to produce will be solved by the distribution of income. We know that how that income is distributed in socialist economy. We know that all the productive resources are under the control of government, managed by, owned by government, and each and every one will be working under the government. No individuals are allowed to earn private income. Okay, everything will be under the control, management is done by the government. So, who will get the maximum amount of goods and services? That depends on their skill, talent, knowledge. Those who are more skilled, those who are more talented, they will be able to earn high income, more income, okay? But there is a less chances of earning private income because each and every everyone will be working under the government. So here there is a less chances of earning private income. Now whoever are skilled labor, they will get higher salary wages. Those who are semi-skilled, they will get little less income. Those who are unskilled, they will get less salary or wages. So depending on their salary, wages, they may be able to demand the various goods and services produced by the socialist economy. And one more thing, whatever the goods and services that will be produced in socialist economy depends on national priorities. They will see what type of things are needed more and what are the things that is necessary for the fulfillment of requirement of the national people. So accordingly, the socialist economy will produce those items which are very essential, which are very necessities. So accordingly, they will manage, they will solve the problem of this for whom to produce. Now, next, this topic completed. Now next we will discuss the solution to the basic problem under mixed economy. Okay, under mixed economy, we know that there is coexistence of both public and private sector. So public sector acts as a socialist economy and private sector acts as a capitalist economy. Now, again the problem is same, whether it is socialist economy, capitalist or mixed, the problem is same, what to produce, how to produce and for whom to produce. Now first we will consider what to produce. Now, in mixed economy there is coexistence of both public and private sector. So here, as I said, this public sector acts as a socialist economy and this private sector acts as a capitalist economy. That means private sector behaves like capitalist economy and public sector behaves like socialist economy. Now, in order to solve the basic problems like what to produce, here in a private sector, this price mechanism. Price mechanism solves the basic problems, whereas in the case of public sector, what is the planning authority? Planning authority is there to solve the problem of what to produce. So we know that in the case of this private sector, how they will solve the problem of what to produce? The producers will produce those goods and services which is highly demanded in the market. At the same time, when they produce goods and services, they keep in their mind that their profit margin should be maximum. So the private sector will produce those goods and services which is highly demanded in the market. At the same time, their profit margin is high. So in the mixed economy, this price mechanism, okay, in private sector especially we are talking about private sector. So this private sector or this capitalist economy, the problem is solved through price mechanism. So here price mechanism play important role in deciding what the producers or private sector are going to produce and how much they are going to produce, because prices play a key role in directing or guiding the producers. So here the price mechanism play a vital role. So the producers will produce those items which are highly demanded by the people. At the same time, when they produce different goods and services, they see the profit margin. They will produce those type of goods where the profit margin is very high. Whereas in the case of public sector, public enterprises, the planning authority is there. So planning authority, we planning authority try to maximize the welfare of a country, and they will not be producing any item with the intention of earning profit. So the private sector is working for the profit motive, whereas this central planning authority is working for the welfare maximization. So here the public sector, or we can say that the socialist economy, okay, will produce those items which are like the national priorities. Depending on the national demand, the producers will produce. And in the case of this public sector, who is there to produce and who is there to decide and take the different economic decisions, central planning authority is there to take the different decisions, and accordingly the things will be produced to solve the problem of what to produce under mixed economy. Now next we will discuss how the problem of this how to produce is solved under mixed economy. Again, in mixed economy, we know that there is coexistence of both public and private sector. So private sector works through price mechanism, whereas public sector works through planning authority. Now, in the case of this choosing the methods or the techniques of production, we can say that in the case of now in the case of private sector, as I have already mentioned that what play a vital role to solve the problem, this price mechanism. And in private sector, which techniques will be chosen by them to produce different goods and services? The techniques which is most efficient and the cheapest methods of production. Okay, so in the private sector of mixed economy, the techniques or the methods of production will be chosen in such a way that the methods of production will be cheap and most efficient, so that they can maximize their profit. Okay, they can maximize their profit, but the thing is that to some extent this private sector are also regulated and controlled by the government policies. They are not totally free from the government policy, though they are free to produce, but to some extent they are under the control, they are regulated by the government official, or they are under the control of government. Whereas in the case of public sector, we know that planning authority is there. Planning authority is there. So planning authority will decide, they will see, they will estimate the different resources. If they see that the labor is maximum in a country, then especially in India, we can take here India. So in India, public sector enterprises will choose that techniques or that methods of production where maximum employment opportunities generated or created. So we know that India is second largest populated country in the world. Now, if we choose the capital intensive techniques, then many laborers will be replaced by the machines, and once it is replaced means unemployment opportunity will be created in the country. So the intention of the government will be to reduce the unemployment rate. So in order to reduce the unemployment rate, the government has to choose the labor intensive techniques where laborers are being employed in a maximum number and machines should be in a less number, so that more employment opportunity will be created in the country. So this is how the problem of how to produce is solved in the mixed economy. Okay, so the last one, okay, last basic problems of mixed economy is for whom to produce. We know that under mixed economy there is coexistence of both private and the public sector. So private sectors, let's consider here public sector. Then we have private sector. So these private sectors will produce for those who can afford his product. Okay, those who are able to pay the prices for his product. So private sector will be producing for those who are able to pay the prices and who are earning high income. So those who are earning high income, for them this private sector will produce so that they can earn maximum profit. Whereas in the case of this public sector, the central planning authority is there, they will decide for whom to produce. So they will produce for those who can fulfill the needs of maximum people. Okay, so educate, we can say that the government will produce for those which ensure the adequate quantity of necessity goods is produced. That means here the public sector will produce in such a way that adequate amount of necessity will be produced to fulfill the needs of mass population. Okay, so here once again this private sector will produce for those who can afford his product, who can be able to buy his product. So generally the private sector is producing for the one who is earning high income, so that he or she can purchase his items, he or she can purchase his product. Whereas in the case of public sector, the planning authority will take decisions in such a way that adequate quantity of essential commodities are produced so that the needs of the mass population can be fulfilled. And we know that the objectives of the public sector is to maximize welfare, whereas in the case of this private sector, their motive is to maximize profit. So they will produce for those from whom they can earn maximum profit, whereas the public sector will produce for those or the way in which they can maximize the welfare. So this is how the problem of basic problems under mixed economy can be solved. So this is the end of the chapter. Next class we will start next topic.